Tobacco is America's most successful industry. A single dollar invested in tobacco stocks in the 1900s is worth $6.3 million today, while a dollar invested in a stock market index would only be worth $38,000. So although big tobacco has been profitable for its investors, the tobacco industry has been heavily penalized, both by the government and by lawsuits. So let's just take a quick historical look at its contentious relationship between the government and its consumers because it helps shed light on big tobacco's position today. So in 1964, the original general surgeon's report came out, which said that smoking can cause cancer and is hazardous to one's health. The following year, in 1965, Congress passed the Federal Cigarette Labeling and Advertising Act, which required that the Surgeon General's warning be plastered on the side of cigarette cartons. In 1970, they prohibited cigarettes from being advertised on the TV and the radio. In the 1990s, flights became smoke-free. In 1992, the age became 18, and in 98, the first massive litigation was passed, and Big Tobacco was massively sued. It was called the Tobacco Master Settlement, and it required them to pay more than $206 billion over the next 25 years. Finally, in 2009, Obama passed a law that gave the FDA authority over cigarette manufacturing. So essentially, the FDA had complete autonomy over the manufacturing of cigarettes, and Big Tobacco had to take a back seat. But despite this government and public backlash, which is quite substantial against Big Tobacco, these tobacco stocks have consistently outperformed index funds. And so our question is, why is this the case? What is it about the tobacco industry that makes it so profitable? We came up with 4 reasons. The first of which is that the price of tobacco is inelastic. Essentially, what that means is if there's an increase in price, the decrease in demand won't be as drastic. And this is because of tobacco's addictive properties. Tobacco industries aren't necessarily in the business of selling tobacco, they're more in the industry of selling nicotine. Our second reason is that the barriers to entry for the tobacco industry are massive. The industry's consolidation over the past decades has created what's called an oligopoly, which is a market dominated by a few really big companies, and it's somewhere between pure capitalism and a monopoly. But this essentially allows them to price smaller competitors out of the market and create pretty sizable profit margins for themselves. Our third reason is that global reach and the emergence of foreign markets has really given American tobacco a relief when some of the more domestic markets have dried up. The fourth reason for why Big Tobacco has been so profitable for its investors is that it's been able to maintain very high margins. So during the MSA, for example, which was the Master Settlement Agreement, when Big Tobacco was fined $203 billion and was forced to pay that money to various parties, instead of bearing the brunt of that price themselves, they were able to redistribute that price to their consumers by tacking on a little bit extra to each pack of cigarettes sold. In this way, they were able to circumnavigate some of this litigation and really not bear the brunt of it themselves. Another reason for why they have such high margins is because they're not a very innovative industry. They've been selling the same products for over 50 to 60 years, and they have very few research and design costs, R&D costs.